In Peru, members of rural communities, organizations from at least 7 regions of northern Peru will take part in the second takeover of Lima. In Russia, the Kremlin said the seizure of the Ukrainian city of Bajmut is key to advance in the operation in the east of the country. And also, France's trade unions increased nationwide strikes and protests against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. In Peru, ronderos from at least 7 regions of northern Peru will take part in the second takeover of Lima, to be held on March 13th, demanding political changes in the country. Groups of volunteers which provide community justice in the rural areas, known as ronderos, will begin their journey to the capital on March the 9th. From the regions of Ancash, La Libertad, Cajamarca, Lambayeque, Piura, Amazonas, and San Martin. With this initiative, the ronderos will also mark the beginning of a strike led by the community justice groups of the mentioned departments. Among the main demands are the resignation of President Dina Boluarte, the closure of the Congress, and the constitute process. Also in Peru, human rights organizations and other non-governmental institutions have described the Boluarte administration's police repression of indigenous people who reject the government as violent and racist. A total of 25 human rights entities and NGOs have expressed their rejection of the repression against the demonstrators through a statement in which they state that the forces of law and order in their security or the country are exercising racist violence against the native Aymara peoples in Lima, especially against women and children. The organizations also expressed their solidarity with those affected by the crackdown on Saturday, March the 4th, in the southern city of Juli, while condemning the arrival and increase of armed forces and police forces in that city, something that they affirmed causes fear and distrust. Honduran President Xiomara Castro demanded on Tuesday that national security authorities provide results within 72 hours, given the increase in massacres and femicides experienced so far in 2023. The head of the state demanded the Secretary of Security to take actions and provide results within the set time frame in order to tackle attacks by organized crime, as well as ongoing massacres and femicides, among other crimes. Meanwhile, the National Police spokesperson, Miguel Martinez, reported that at least 8 people were killed in a village in the department of Comayagua, in the center of the country. The victims were 7 adults, 3 of them women and 1 minor, who appeared to be from the same family. According to a tally carried out by local media, 9 massacres, which amounted to 37 deaths, have been committed so far in 2023. And the former president of Ecuador, Lenín Moreno, confirmed that he will request political asylum in Paraguay in the middle of a judicial process against him for bribery allegations. During an interview, Moreno commented that he is consulting with his lawyers about the actions to follow and stated that he will request asylum in Paraguay, a country where he currently resides, where he serves as commissioner for the Organization of American States for Disability Affairs. Moreno, along with other 36 people, is being investigated in the Sinohydro case, or the COS, also known by the media as INA Papers, which investigates an alleged corruption network around the construction of the Coca-Cola Sinclair hydroelectric project. The indictment stated that the involved, which include the former president, would have received about $76 million in bribes from the Chinese Sino-Hydro engineer and construction company in charge of the building of the hydroelectric plant. And now we move on to other topics. In Venezuela, the head of the state, Nicolás Maduro Moros, participated in the ecumenical prayer of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the departure of the Supreme Commander Hugo Chavez. From the courtyard of honor of the Bolivarian Military University of Venezuela, members of the armed forces fired artillery blanks in honor of the Bolivarian and anti-imperialist thoughts Commander Hugo Chavez, encouraging the people and military organisms. During the inter-religious ceremony, those who officiated the event agreed that Chavez left an important legacy with his hard work for the recovery of the homeland. In this regard, they also highlighted his absolute passion for the conquest of his ideals, even above his physical limits, in the midst of the illness that ended his life.
That makes us feel proud to belong to this history, and make us feel proud to have seen grown, to have seen live, and to have had the presence in the command of the homeland of a wonderful and great man, our Supreme Commander Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias. Thanks to God, thanks to life, to history, for having placed this man in this homeland to free the consciences and to start a long process of centuries of building a new society, the socialist society of the 21st century.
Venezuelan president pointed out that the death of Hugo Chavez brought a deep sorrow that was transformed into the spiritual strength to reaffirm the patriotic feeling and to continue walking his path in spite of the aggressions.
The oath of patriotism was stronger than the pain and uncertainty to make us move forward, to face all the scenarios that were rising through these 10 years. Today, we have come again to this academy, 10 years later, to tell Commander Chavez, your example was stronger, your courage was stronger, the sacred oath was stronger, and here we are standing, victorious, ready to face new scenarios.
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, the Kremlin said the seizure of the Ukrainian city of Bajmut is key to advance in its operation in the east of the country. According to Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu, the seizure of the city will give way to a new offensive operations on the defense lines of the Ukrainian army. The report says that in recent weeks, Russia had made steady progress, advancing to control access point to the city from the north, the east, and the south. Meanwhile, Ukrainian authorities said that they will not give up the city and will send reinforcements. On Monday, the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu inspected during a work visit to Donbas some facilities built by the Russian military, particularly in the city of Mariupol. The officer's visit to Mariupol comes as Russian forces approach Bajmut, a city in eastern Ukraine that has become the scene of the longest-running battle in the conflict between the two countries. According to the institution, Shoigu toured the port city to oversee reconstruction efforts, and in this regard visited a medical center built by the military, a dispatch center of the Ministry of Emergency Situations, as well as a newly built neighborhood with 1,000 five-story residential buildings. At the beginning of last year, Russia launched a special military operation against Ukraine to defend the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics from Kiev's aggressions. France's trade unions stepped up nationwide strikes and protests to force a policy of U-turn of President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. Unions have vowed to bring the country to a standstill over the proposed changes, which include raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 and increasing the number of years workers have to make contributions for a full pension. President Emmanuel Macron put the plan at the center of this re-election campaign last year, and his cabinet said the changes are essential to prevent the pension system from falling into deficit in coming years. But they have faced fierce resistance from both parliament and the streets, with almost 2 in 3 people across the country supporting the protest against it.
The battle begins today. In a few hours, we can say the whole country will come to a halt as one after another, professions begin the fight in a large number of sectors that are decisive for the life of the country. The strike is renewable, and we must expect that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow will be days of very intense and justified social mobilization.
In the United States, at least 35 people have been detained during a protest at Govt City, a new police training center in Atlanta that's been the site for prior demonstrations, which left a protester dead in January. The incident came at the start of what demonstrators called a national day of action against police terror at the $90 million law enforcement facility located in the Willow Knee Forest. The mobilization occurred after officers in January fatally shot a protester at the construction zone during an encounter where a state trooper was wounded. The recent events were part of a steady stream of protests where activists, some of whom have camped in the forest surrounding the planned facility, ended up arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. Critics argue the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center will fuel police brutality. On Tuesday, China accused the United States of increasing tensions between the two countries and warned that its policy of the White House could lead to confrontations. After a press conference held during the first session of the 14th National People's Congress, China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang said Beijing will continue to follow the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation to achieve a healthy and stable relationship with Washington. Qin also said that China will maintain the path of multilateralism to advance the democratization of international relations. The diplomat said that the United States only seeks to promote confrontation in order to undermine regional integration under pretended freedom ideals. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad on Tuesday in an unannounced visit, moving to bolster U.S. ties. The visit came just days before the 20th anniversary of the U.S.-led invasion that ousted Saddam Hussein and triggered years of unrest as the country continues to fight against the extremist Islamic State group. Austin, the highest-ranking cabinet official to visit the country since the start of the Biden administration, met with Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani and is expected to meet other senior officials while in the country. After his visit to Baghdad, Austin will return to Amman, Jordan, where he started his trip to the Middle East on Sunday. On Tuesday, Iran's Deputy Interior Minister Majid Mirharmari announced the first arrests in the spate of mystery intoxication of schoolgirls. According to Mirharmari, based on the investigations of the intelligence agencies, a number of people have been arrested in 5 provinces, and the relevant agencies are conducting a full investigation. More than 5,000 Iranian school children have been affected by the spate of poisonings that has targeted mainly female pupils. According to a lawmaker investigating the cases, scores of schools have been hit with pupils suffering symptoms ranging from shortness of breath to nausea and vertigo after reporting unpleasant odors on school premises. After the incidents, some of them have been treated in hospitals. Nigeria's opposition leader Atiku Abubakar, who came second in a February 25th presidential poll, took to the streets on Monday, along with his supporters, to contest the election results. Abubakar's supporters and members of his People's Democratic Party, the PDP, dressed in black to march to the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Abuja and file a petition alleging electoral fraud. The commission has acknowledged that there were technical difficulties on polling day, but rejects the allegations of fraud. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, which came third in the election, has also rejected the results and said he would go to court to prove to Nigerians that he won the presidential election. With 93.4 million registered voters, the turnout was just over 27%, even lower than in the 2019 election. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, warned that close to 5 million people are still acutely food insecure in Somalia. The director of the FAO office, Rain Paulsen, said that the prolonged crisis has exhausted the coping mechanisms of the country's most vulnerable population. According to the United Nations in Somalia, there are cases of indigence, displacement, child malnutrition, and other scourges affecting thousands of families. The entity also predicts that the number of people suffering from acute food insecurity will rise to 6.5 million between April and June of this year, which represents more than a third of the country's total society. According to the latest official data, at least 96,000 citizens are currently suffering from the worst degree of hunger. Now we move on to other topics. Rescue efforts are underway in parts of Malaysia after seasonal floods killed at least 5 people and displaced over 40,000. In this sense, the National Flood Disaster Agency confirmed Johor, with a population of 4 million, is the worst hit by this season's floods. Tens of thousands of its residents have now moved to relief centers in schools and community halls. Meanwhile, experts from the country's meteorological department warned that the wet weather could continue until April. Malaysia, like many of its Southeast Asian neighbors, is vulnerable to seasonal floods. Neighboring Singapore has seen heavy torrential rains since February. In Indonesia, rescue continues searching for 47 people who are believed to be buried in their houses by landslides that tore through villages on the country's Natuna Islands after torrential rains. Officials also added that at least 10 people were confirmed dead. According to the National Disaster Management Agency, 8 others were pulled alive with injuries, 3 of whom were in critical condition. In this sense, government officials reported that 47 people were trapped in 27 houses that were buried on Monday under tons of mud from surrounding hills. The recent landslides displaced more than 1,000 people who were taken to evacuation centers and other shelters. Likewise, National Disaster Management Agency spokesperson Abdul Buhari said 2 helicopters and several vessels carrying rescuers, medical teams, and relief supplies had departed Jakarta and nearby islands to assist the search. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.